Hello, I'm Jason Lightoller from Woodside, and tonight's topic is about how to transfer these pattern markings to your fabric underneath. So this pattern is actually a McCall's pattern. It's one I haven't made myself. It's a commercial pattern, and it's one that I'm using just for convenience. Now, bearing in mind that these markings, which in this case here is for a dart, a pocket here, and buttonhole placements on this side, they're only there literally just as a standard template. You can of course put these markings anywhere you want, and you can arrange these placements anywhere on your garment you like. However, for the purpose of this, what I'm going to do is just keep everything as it is on the pattern so you're able to see clearly what we're doing. Now, there are several ways to transfer your markings from your pattern to your fabric underneath, and one of them is to use tracing paper, sometimes known as dressmaker's tracing paper, craft tracing paper, but it amounts to the same thing. And what it is, it's essentially waxed paper. It comes in different colors, so you've got red, you've got yellow, you've got navy blue, and it also comes in white. And what happens is that it's wrapped in pieces of wax paper like that. As you can see, the red staining there, and it's important to keep it wrapped in the wax paper because it does have a tendency to dry out. You do need to use a notched tracing wheel with this, otherwise it won't work effectively. And what you need to do is use a colour that is going to contrast strongly with your actual colour of the fabric. In this case, I'll be using yellow because I don't have any white left. I could get away with the red to a degree. Obviously, black or navy blue would be a no-no. So in order to use this properly, you need to have a really firm surface. So underneath here, I've got a cutting mat. It wouldn't be any good to do this on a soft surface. So what you do is underneath your pattern piece, you put the coloured tracing paper coloured side down, and you put your pattern piece over it. So you put your straight edge rule along your line that you want to trace. In this case, I'm going to use the pocket placement, and you have to match it perfectly. And then you take your tracing wheel and you press very firmly down onto the pattern, and you go backwards and forwards twice. And what should happen is that, as you can see, this line from the pattern piece is transferred onto your fabric. And then what you need to do is mark the two edges of the pocket there, which we will do. So again, we line that edge up, backwards and forwards, that side, and backwards and forwards that side. And as we lift the paper up, we can see quite clearly here that this will correspond to this edge here. Now that's all well and good, but clearly that's only transferred this marking to one side. It hasn't actually moved it to the other side. No tracing paper will do that. And the way to do that is by using something called tailor tacks, and I'm going to show you those now. So this is just an offcut of fabric from the scraps that I had when I cut the waistcoat out. And what I'm going to do is just show you, before I go through the pattern piece, what tailor's tacks look like. You use a piece of basting thread. Now, basting thread is actually a weakened version of normal sewing thread. You shouldn't be using basting thread to sew garments up with because it has a very, very weak breaking point. If you don't have basting thread, then you can use just ordinary sewing thread, but it has to be threaded through the needle on the double, as you see here, without any knots at the end. And you take your needle, you start at the point of where you want your markings to transfer, and you go through both layers. And what you want to do is leave a really long tail, so perhaps 3 centimeters, and your stitches should be quite small, so about 5 millimeters, and you leave a long tail again about 3 centimeters, and you keep going as I have there for as long as your marking is. If your tail is too short, if your tail of threads is too short, then you run the risk of your markings coming out. And you take a pair of snips, like that, cut that off, and then what you do is right through these loops here, you cut them all the way through. There we go. Make sure you cut through the loops, and then you just simply pull the two pieces apart like that, not all the way through, until you roughly got a centimetre worth of tails there, and then you snip through them, obviously being very careful not to cut your fabric. And that serves two purposes. Not only do you have markings on the wrong side of both sides there, so this side and this side, on the right side of the garment you've also got markings there. Now I'm going to show you how that works through the actual pattern piece. So on this occasion I haven't used basting thread. Just to prove my point, I've just used some ordinary sewing thread. This happens to be orange, but you do need a colour that does contrast strongly with your fabric. So I haven't used any tracing paper as I did literally a few moments ago. I'm going to go straight through the pattern paper with this orange thread, and again the stitches are the same size, and what I'm going to do is keep them 3 centimeter loops, sorry, and make sure that you keep in line with your pattern markings. And again, I'm just going to take the small scissors and cut the loops, so there and here. You can pull the pattern piece away. So the pattern piece has been pulled away, and now we're just going to snip in the middle of this, being careful not to cut the fabric. And there we have, on the inside, on the wrong side, the buttonhole marked there and there, and on both sides of the right side of the fabric, the buttonhole marked. So in conclusion, using the carbon tracing paper is good for cutting lines. It's good if you only want the markings on one side of the fabric. It isn't good if you want the markings to go through all layers. The tailor's tacks are best if you want the markings to go through all thicknesses.